Hello and welcome to Lean in Government podcast. This is our third episode. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to build a momentum, how to inspire people around us. My focus today is going to be on how to build that team and how to build a momentum for continuous improvement within government environment. As you have heard last time, I gave you an example where I started for the first time in government, and it was in parking services, doing parking operation and security. And I gave you some examples on what we have done initially. I explained to you the importance of listening and observing first when you go in an environment like government or any other type of work environments. But what's important is to really introduce lean to the people around you correctly. The reason for that is that many people introduce it incorrectly, and people really have a bad taste for lean. Why do I say that? Well, if you don't know how to correctly introduce lean to government and government employees, that's going to become maybe flavor of the month. Something that's bad, fake, okay? And most people do it. Unfortunately, they fake it. They make it like a shiny object for a short period of time, and then they move on to something else. Let's try innovation. Let's try this. Let's try that. But the important thing is, when you work for government, you have to make sure that you introduce lean properly, and if you do, you will see a lot of success. You will have friends that will help you along the way. But to get to that level, where you're going to create that friendship with your co-workers, with your manager, and others, you need to take some steps. And step number one is introducing it properly to government environment. So what do I mean by that? So first, you got to find a problem. Remember how I said in the last episode, in Lean, we always start with a question, what problem am I trying to solve? If you know what problem you really want to solve, not just you, but you and your team, your leadership, then you have a good starting point. Then you need to find out the why. Why do we want to improve this problem? Why is this problem in the first place? Okay? And I have a book here that I brought with me. It's one of these older books, but for those of you that don't know, Simon Sinek is a great author and well-known person for his golden circle, if you go to YouTube. I got this book, I believe, in 2009, so it's called Start with Why. Everything we do, we need to start with why. So if you don't have this book, I would recommend that you pick this book and read, written by Simon Sinek. So same thing here in government, we want to start with asking why, okay? Because we humans, doesn't matter what environment you're in, you always want to have a purpose to do something. And if we figure out the purpose and we see the reason why we need to improve something, make things better, then we're going to have a better buy-in from our team, number one. We're going to be inspired, okay? And that's going to be a great motivation for us to do whatever we need to do to improve. So that's why we always start with why. The other thing we need to focus on is connecting lean to serving people, not a profit. Government is not for profit. For those of you that are already working in government or have worked in government, you know what I'm talking about. Government does not make profit. They need to balance the budget, break even, but not make a penny. So it's not for-profit organization like the private sector. So we have to talk about, when we introduce lean, how lean is helping residents, and how make service faster and easier is going to help our citizens. So we need to begin with something small. We're not going to work right away on larger projects. Initially, we always start with something small. So I'm going to give you an example, real example, where I started small. So last time I mentioned how hard it was for my 3 shift supervisors to staff all the booths, and it was the biggest problem that they had. Or on the security side, with security staff, how hard it was to train new hires when we onboard new security officers. The training was terrible. So that's where I started. Let me now continue with some of those same projects. When we 5-fast and organized those booths to make them identical, that was a great improvement. We celebrated that. People found joy in that. And as they were onboarding new staff members, they were talking about that. Some of those staff members worked for the city for 25 years. And those employees saw positive change. And they also bragged about it because they were part of that change. It was not top-down driven event. They were included from the beginning. And those changes they were making, most of those changes were done by them. So what did that do for us? We got the employees buy-in. They were involved. Okay? Whenever you involve someone in solving a problem and they're part of that solution, everybody feels good on that team. It's different in a top-down approach where the leadership tells employees what to do and how to do it. Then what do we see? There's not much buy-in. They do it because of your title. They do it because they have to. But they're not going to really care much about it. All right, so we talked about starting with why. So what do we do? So what I said, first what we do is start small. Begin somewhere. So in parking operations, one of the problems and struggles that my team and leadership had was staffing the booths. So organizing booths was an amazing improvement, but not 100%. We had other issues that I encountered by interviewing and speaking to the booth attendants, especially to those while working during the events. That's the best time to find problems, when people are really in action and using the tools that they have provided to them during their working hours. So what did I do? I did go and interview them and watch them, observe them. As I initially said this in episode number 2, but then I encountered another problem besides booths being unorganized or set up differently. The other problem that they had was with their paperwork. They had legal size, so it's a big size of a paper, legal size paper for like morning shift, first shift, when there is a regular hours, no events. So they had 1 page to complete that had, I don't know how many, but it was like 40, 50 fields. So confusing, so hard to fill this piece of paper out. Then, if the same person would stay after 5 p.m. in the same booth, typically if there's an event night and we have some events in town, they have to grab another copy, legal size of paper, and start documenting everything again, but in this case it's going to be an event, and there were different titles, you know. So we had these 2 sheets of paper that one individual working, for example, from 2 p.m. till, 8 p.m. in the evening, for example. They had to fill out these 2 sheets, and it was very difficult for them to fill it out. And one of the problems they had, because it was so difficult and had so many fields to fill out, people got confused, they provided incorrect information, and the supervisors and team leaders constantly complained about it, and they had to go and fix things and adjust. And they would hold staff back at the end of the shift when they're counting their money because paperwork was not filled out properly. So the people had to go to the lunchroom, fix the paperwork, go again back in the safe room, back in line, back in the safe room to get the money counted and then to verify it with their booth sheet. So what I did to help this team solve this problem is I wanted to know what problems they are having with this booth sheet. Number 1, why is this causing some issues? Why do we have so many errors? And then we are paying people to stay late until we solve the problems, fix their paperwork. We can't let them go until the money is counted in and put back in the safe. And to do that, the paperwork must match what's in the cash register, right? So one of the things that I found out is they were filling out so many different fields on that piece of paper, and then sometimes duplicating because they're working for evening shift. And that was confusing, too much work. So what I did, I asked the team going forward to make a copy of their sheet, booth sheet, and then to circle or highlight areas they don't understand. They don't know the reason why they have to fill this out, or they don't know how to do it. And also to circle an area or a field on that booth sheet that they think should not be there, that we need to take it out. And then I told them to give me a copy of that booth sheet and leave it in my inbox, which was right outside my office. So what happened? People got excited that there's somebody there listening to them. There's somebody there that's really willing to do something about it. And it's been going on for years, but changes haven't been done for whatever reason. So next day I come in the morning, I found, I don't know how many, but many, my inbox right outside the office was full with some documents, and most of them were these boot sheets, these copies that I asked for. And people start suggesting, I do not understand what this field is for. I don't understand the reason why we need to provide this kind of information. Is this really necessary? Why are you making it so difficult here at the bottom of this boot sheet to calculate the money that we're bringing in and depositing? So there were many questions, many suggestions and recommendations that I received on those sheets. I took that to my morning meeting with the leadership, explained to them the problem that I have encountered, what I have seen with my own eyes during the events, and how people are struggling with this simple piece of paper that has so much information that needs to be provided by a booth attendant, someone who's just collecting money for parking tickets. I suggested to the leadership that if they're okay with that, I'm going to start developing a new sheet, basically by taking out the fields, rearranging the fields, trying it out with the staff, and then adjusting it as we go until we really perfect one piece of paper that's going to work for everyone and everybody's going to be happy. So the leadership was okay with that. They gave me their approval to work on this project with my team to resolve this problem. I told them it's going to take weeks. Okay, not months, but weeks, till we figure out. And that's what we did. People started giving me suggestions. If I saw 2, 3, 4, 5 people saying the same thing, I would, for example, rearrange the fields on that piece of paper, on the boot sheet, or take some information out. And then I would always send a new fresh copy every time I had a revision with the new revision number to the supervisors, leaders, and people in the front office as well. Those folks like taking care of financial documents and data entry and all that. So we reduced the amount of information that needed to be collected. So now all that information that we needed to collect, we were able to fit on a regular 8.5 by 11, so letter size paper. So we no longer were requiring to have it on a legal size paper. One thing I forgot to mention, there were, I said, like close to 50 booths or so within the city between the parking ramps and surface lots. For each booth, they had 2 pieces of paper. So for each booth, they had to create a bunch of copies, blank copies, and then later when they collect them, they had to file those in file cabinets. So the safe room was packed with those documents. And there's a policy in government, you have these retention policies, and our retention policy was to hold on onto those sheets for 7 years. So that's why we had that room on the second floor that I was talking about, that my predecessor completely filled up with his office stuff, his paperwork. And among his paperwork, that's where the old boot sheets were located as well. So they keep until a certain time And when they have too many of them, then they box them up and take them to the second floor. And then after that, they call a shredder. It's like a big truck, comes once a month. So all those 7 years plus documents can be shredded on site safely. Imagine how many sheets we had. 50 boots. Let's say 50 boots times 2. That's 100 folders. Okay, 100 folders for the blank sheets, 100 folders for the completed sheets. So you can just imagine how many of these folders we had. It was a nightmare. And those are not just the regular folders. So you got to have a bigger file cabinet that you can fit legal size of paper. And for those of you that have worked with the regular size of file cabinet and the large one, you know what I'm talking about. Those, even the folders cost more money because they're larger. And they're kind of unique. So it's not even a standard. Not many people use the legal size of paper folder, those big ones. Anyway, we did. So one of the recommendations that I received from my team members says, Alen, now that our boot sheet is not as big as it used to be, so one of the booth attendants asked me, Alen, why didn't you print this on a paper 8.5 by 11? Another great suggestion came from a team member, Alen. Instead of having copies, for example, Government Center South, Government Center North, Government Center West, those are the names of the booths, why don't you have just one paper, one boot sheet, and then on the top, for the parking ramps, on the top, you have all these different locations, and we can just circle it. And that way you're going to know what that boot sheet is for. I thought it was a great idea. I said, hey, that's a great idea. That's going to save us a ton of making copies for all these different booths. And that's what we did. So we took that idea, we started abbreviating all these booths, abbreviating, and then start retraining our staff and letting them know going forward, this is how it is. So my team was well aware that every day they come to work, they're going to see a different booth sheet because we are constantly adjusting, testing, trying it out to see what works best. And that's what we did. And then the other thing happened to us. I got a call from somebody in the front office asking about some information that we're no longer providing. And that's a mistake. So remember how I said in the first episode, we sometimes going to fail, and we don't call those things failures, we call them opportunities for improvement. So I said, yes, I apologize. I'm the leader who took that out based on the suggestions I received. And I didn't think it was necessary to fill that out, and nobody in the front office told me that it was needed. However, this individual wasn't there for a week or two on vacation or something like that, and this lady who typically needs that information wasn't at work. So we were batching, giving these copies when these copies need to go to her desk and she needs to process something. When she got there 2 weeks later, there was a bunch of those copies on her desk and she needed to start processing. Now, we didn't have that information. So right away, what did I do? Created a new revision, we added that field. I explained to the team that we must have this type of information. I think it was something about account code dash something, few numbers after that, if I'm not mistaken. And we started providing the information again. After maybe 4 or 5 weeks, I haven't heard any complaints or any new suggestions from our team working in the booth or from their supervisors or anyone really complaining from the front office that utilizes this information to plug into the computers and the software and databases. So everybody was happy. So what I did, I said, hey, here's our final version for now. It's not written in stone, but here's our final version. So one piece of paper now, instead of all these hundreds of copies, right? And this piece of paper now is going to tell us what booth you are in and if it's an event or non-event paper. So what we did also, I forgot to mention, is non-event was on the first side, on the front side of the paper, and the non-event was on the other side of the same paper. So if you are a booth attendant who came in early, like in the morning or early afternoon, but you were required to work 6, 8, 10 hours that day, and you would stay in the evening as well to work in the same booth, but you have to switch at 5 p.m. from a non-event to event, you only had to flip that piece of paper and fill out some additional information in the back. Not a lot, but some additional information. People in the booth loved it. Talking about this one lady who worked there for 25 years, and her mother retired before I joined the city of Grand Rapids. She worked there for 30 years and retired from the city. Her daughter was still there. I believe 25 years she worked for the city of Grand Rapids when I joined them. And she said, this is amazing. I wish we have done this before. And she said, why didn't we think of this before? Why was it so complicated? This is so easy and simple. So now, you see, we did what? We started with what problem are we trying to solve? We identify the problem. We start asking the question why. Why is this a problem? Okay. Why do we need to fix this problem? Okay. And then we involved our entire team. Not just the booth attendants, we involved booth attendants, we involved supervisors and people from the front office and other leaders. So the entire team, for the first time, I don't know if they ever had this before, where everybody working from a temp employee to the director of parking services working on this solution in some way and capacity. So we solved that. So now we solved two problems. In last episode, I talked to you about a workplace organization, reorganizing all the booths to look the same, everything in the same spot, so there were no more excuses. I can't run that booth because it's set up differently, has a different process. Every booth was the same as far as the process and where items are located. However, there are different sizes, different colors, different locations, but inside the booth, everything was set up the same way, and we developed only one process. Number two, now we fixed this piece of paper, so now people, when they come in the office, 80 to 90% of the paperwork was completed 100% correctly, and the supervisor was able to check off in no time. Count the money, put the money in the safe, and deposit that money at the bank later on. The other thing that the team has improved now is the amount of paper that we have to collect, blank copies and all that. So what we did, the supervisors recommended to me that we no longer need that many of file cabinets. So we got out many of those file cabinets, took them out of the safe room, and created another desk, like a corner desk. So we freed up some space. Just to give you an idea how you need to start something small and build upon that. And number two, what's really important in Lean is that we involve the team. It's a team effort. And we need to speak about that all the time. When I say we, I mean leaders, okay? Whoever's leading those efforts. And it was me and my supervisors. I always encourage my supervisors to train their staff and let them know that this is a team effort and that they're going to be the biggest part of solving this problem. Not me as a leader or the director of the department. It's going to be them. And they fixed it. They're the ones who suggested to me. I sat at my computer, used Excel, started adjusting the form until we developed a form that made everybody happy. And that's really what excited my team. Really, we started building momentum. Say, Alen, what are we going to do next? This is great. And then the security team heard about it. They started suggesting some other ideas that they would like to see improve with their work environment. One of the ideas they had is the one storage room that they had where they kept all the stuff, because now they saw the booths, how organized they are, and we had audits to make sure they're always organized. Supervisors would check on them, the team leader. So somebody in the leadership role would check and make sure that those booths not only are organized, but they stay organized. And the security team saw that this was sustaining. Hey, this is a system. This is a not one-time housekeeping thing where we clean up. And then it goes back to the old ways. These people have a system. And not only do they have a system, they have now team members. They're willing to participate, to keep it organized. They feel proud of it. This is their thing. And this young security team that I had, they wanted to do something with their vehicles and that storage room that I just mentioned. And that's another project. Maybe another time I'll talk more about that. But I really want to focus on in this episode is how to build that momentum, how to excite people, how to motivate people to do something good. So one thing I would not recommend is using some big words, maybe some Japanese words, acting like you know more than they do. Is really be humble. Be humble. Work with your people. Try to find out from them what bugs them. And start small. And start involving them. And when you start involving them and the leaders, and you build that link between the team members and leaders, you will see success. Those people that fail, they usually have only leadership telling people they're in the field what to do, even though these people up in the leadership roles don't know really what these people go through, because they don't do their job every day. They have to do a job in their office or somewhere else, and they're far away from the Gemba, actual place of work. There's a big disconnect, and that's why they fail, and that's why it doesn't work. Or, for example, if the people out in the field fix everything themselves, but they don't involve the leaders or people in the office, there's going to be disconnect as well. Why? Like the people in the field told me to take out certain fields from that boot sheet. I did. Well, somebody in the front office needed that information. And it was critical, right? So that's why it's good to have everyone join and everyone talk to each other, work with each other to solve a problem. But the people closest to the Gemba, to the actual place of work, they are usually the ones who are going to do more work. They are usually the ones who are going to have better ideas for improvement. So in this particular case that I just shared with you, well, booth attendants are the best ones that know the problems, and they might have the best solutions for those problems. Why? Because they're closest to the work versus supervisor or a director or somebody else like a leader in the office. But we all have to work as a team. And the other thing I want to mention in government, anytime you do projects like this, always remind your team why we're doing this project. And one of my things was, hey, we're not here for profit. We're not here to make widgets. We're here to serve our public. We're here to serve our citizens. We're here to serve our residents and visitors of this great city. And we want to be the number one. We want to be the best team. We want people to come here and enjoy. People work hard for their money. So when they come to visit our city, we want to provide best services that we can so they feel comfortable coming to the city, to downtown, and so they can have some peace and enjoy their events or going to a restaurant or whatever business they want to do within the city. The other thing that's important that needs to be also mentioned in this episode is that we need to show results fast. So that's why I said pick something small, but something that's really relevant and something that bugs people, okay? But work on it fast. So like I said, I didn't spend months, I spent weeks on solving this problem, and then show the results to the leaders and others. And then celebrate. This is very important. Not just fixing things and adjusting things and making things better. This is one thing, and it's important. But we're talking about human beings. So we humans find joy when we fix something, when we help someone. That's in human nature. But also we should celebrate. And when I say celebrate, I'm not saying spend too much money. First of all, you who work for government, there's no such thing as a budget for parties. I know private sector people don't understand that. They think we have a little a stash of cash somewhere we can buy pizza like they do. In government, there's no such thing. You can't do that. I wasn't well aware of that when I initially joined government because I was a leader, right? So I was running operations in the automotive industry, had, I think, 285 people in that plant that I was running. We always had money for parties to celebrate, to acknowledge someone, something like that. We always had some budgets for that. Well, in government, we didn't. And that's one thing that bothered me a lot. I said, come on, really? How are we going to motivate people? How are we going to acknowledge some of their hard work? So we had to find a new way, a legal way, but new way. So we can't take money out of any budgets, okay? It's not permissible and allowed, but we had to find a way. So one thing we found, again, talking to the people, say, hey, here's the real thing. We don't have money. We have a ton of money, but we can't use it. And everything's regulated in the city, and you have to use it properly. And people said, Alen, we've been doing something for a while. Maybe we can utilize that money. We're collecting these cans, soda cans, like from Coke or something like that. When we drink, we put it in this box, we collect them, and then we go to return them and then get some cash for that. Maybe we can use that and encourage everybody to pitch in, every time they buy a soda, a Coke, and then to recycle inside this bin, and then so they know they're supporting this budget where we can have some cash for these parties and celebrations. And I thought it was a great idea. So I presented the leaders. Leaders said, yeah, it has nothing to do with the city. So you're basically just donating, collecting between you. Instead of you collecting money from those empty cans, putting in your pocket, you are willing to donate this for this good cause and for this budget that we use to buy pizzas and drinks and stuff like that occasionally. So people now, when they understood why we have this bin over there that we collect recyclable containers, so we can take it and recycle it and get some money for it, people start buying Cokes and Pops and whatever you call it, and they start recycling. So we start getting more and more and more. So I would have a security officer or somebody else, booth attendant, would volunteer and take those bags and then recycle them and get our cash back to us so we can have this little budget as a team so we can use it for celebration. I thought it was a great idea, and nobody had a problem with that because it wasn't the city's money. It was our money. But I thought it was a great idea. So innovation, talking about innovation, look how innovative this team was. I found it really interesting how innovative they were. So now back to celebration. So what do? We use that money to buy pizza, maybe, to celebrate some of the projects. Not much, but, donuts, pizza, stuff like that, cookies. Very little, but it was good. And then we would bring leaders. Leaders from our department, of course, director, for example. But sometimes leaders from City Hall, and have them just stop by maybe sometimes and acknowledge this. Leaders from the union, because City of Grand Rapids full-time employees were they're unionized. Having their union representative, for example. So this is something that you can do in your environment to boost that energy, to build that momentum, to share during those celebrations the wins from your team. Let them explain what they did, how they challenged me and other leaders, how they made some improvements. Now that the team saw that we listened to them, leaders, there's no disconnect. You are here, I'm here, I'm better than you or something like that. God forbid. No, we're one team. We're one family. Like mom, dad, and kids is what? One family, right? So that's what we try to build, and this is very, very important in Lean. And why am I saying this in episode number 3? Because if you can't do this, you're not going to be able to introduce Lean properly to government. In government, again, remember, there's no bonuses, okay? There's no some recognition, say, oh, you're great. You know what my boss, Pam, told me many times? I don't remember this from the first time she told me that. She says, Alen, you'll be lucky if you get a thank you in government for doing something properly and improving something. I said, what does she mean by that? I didn't get it right away. Why would people not thank me if I did something, improve something? And that's how it is. It's not a bad thing. I'm not blaming anyone. That's how government is, They're not used to this, And our government has many inefficiencies. And it's not to blame the people. It's that we need to find a way how to eliminate that waste, how to solve problems. That's what we need to do. And that's why I think and I know Lean is a perfect solution for any government. In closing, what I want to share with you today is that we as leaders, especially those Lean leaders, need to build momentum within our team. And why is that? When we build the momentum, people are going to be just joining us. People are going to see the success, and we're going to be surrounded with more people that are full of energy and motivation, that are willing to become part of our team and help us with our Lean journey. That's why we need to build momentum. I like the one example that John Maxwell likes to use in his speeches. So if we have a train, imagine we have a train going 100 miles an hour, and there's a barrier, there's a wall, where you put a ball on the railroad tracks. If the train is going 100 miles an hour, he's going to break through that wall like through the knife through the butter. But if the train does not have a momentum, you have that barrier, and the train is right in front of the barrier, the train is not going to be able to break that wall. Why? Because the train does not have the momentum. And that's why in Lean, same thing with the train example, in Lean we need to build a momentum with our team so we can continuously improve, continuously make things better, excite others, inspire others, motivate others. And that's why we need that momentum. And that is why it's so important that Lean leaders build the momentum from the get-go, from the beginning of the Lean introduction. Not in the middle at the end. No, you got to do it from the beginning. And that's why I'm mentioning this in episode number 3, not at 33. Okay, that's the reason. And that is all I had for today's episode. Hopefully it gave you some ideas how to improve something with your team, and most importantly, how to build that momentum. Again, I'm not advertising. I don't get nothing from this advertisement, but I love this book, Start With Why. If you have never read that, from Simon Sinek, I highly recommend that you grab that book, that copy, and read that, and you're going to see importance of why we always have to start with why and give people a purpose. When people have a purpose, then you're going to get their buy-in. All right, so that's all for today. Hope you're going to like and subscribe to our channel and recommend us to others. And I hope you're going to hit that notification bell. Till next time, goodbye.